All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And really, today's episode is really going to make sense as to why this podcast is named the Mind of George Show. Probably one of the biggest hidden secrets to my success, to most of my friends' success, and for whatever reason is not talked about enough. And so I have a very special guest today, probably the world's most interesting man that I know and have talked to recently, which I'm excited to bring into. And we're going to be unpacking a lot of fun stuff, probably around mindset, stress relief, anxiety, changing habits, setting yourself up to win as an entrepreneur in your business and your life, and whatever else that we can get into. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce my dear friend, and I'm going to let him pronounce his name, but his name is Alp. And how do I say your last name?
Alp Tekin.
Alp Tekin.
Coach.
I always feel
Yes.
like I want to say it in like it's a one word, like it's a one
Right.
name, like Alp Tekin is
Yes.
your name, and that sounds like
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
royal. But I'm super excited to have you, my friend. So good morning, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Of course. So I'm going to kick it off like I do everybody and everywhere. And you've had an interesting life, but I want to go right to that relating point. So when you think back, because you've been in business for a while, you've been playing this game for a long time. When you think back, what is the biggest mistake that you have ever made in business, and what did you learn from it?
I think the biggest mistake is that I have listened to so-called experts rather than my own opinion and voice. You know, I probably spent, I don't know how many thousands and thousands to experts and coaches who all knew better, or at least seemed to know better. And in the end, things didn't work out the way they should have been. Not because they were not qualified necessarily, not because they didn't know what they are talking about, because I think at the end of the day, it's us living our lives, also in business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and somehow we don't know why something might make sense, but we feel it. And if we do not go after this, we are not in our own power.
Mm-hmm.
So if we give away the power just to experts because we believe somebody else has the wisdom for our next step, basically, this might or might not be true, depending on where we are coming from.
That's a powerful lesson. I've learned that one too. It's probably like one of the number one things that I bump into a lot with like people I coach and students, and even a lot of the industry in which we're in, right? Like experts
Right.
selling the answers for you. When
Oh, yeah.
I think what really is, and we're going to get into this, but really what it is that you know there's all these wise quotes that like when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and
Absolutely.
I think there's this consumption, like this dopamine hit of like advocating our own responsibility and our own wisdom, thinking that
Yes.
somebody else will give it or
Yes.
have it. And the analogy, and I'm going to ask for your thoughts on this, but the analogy that I always use, and I believe my buddy Jeff Spencer was the one who said this to me, or something in context, and it always stuck with me. And it's like Olympic athletes are Olympians with or without a coach. The coach's job is to help navigate blind spots and keep them on track, but they're the ones
Yes.
running the race. And when I think about
Yes.
us as human beings, like
Yes.
we innately, when we spend time alone or connecting to our breath or feeling our emotions, what we're tapping into is wisdom. And that
Yep.
wisdom is like a barometer, right? Like I wrote an email
Yep.
about this the other day. You can either be a thermostat or you can be a thermometer, right? And thermometers just react. All you can do, like I can freeze you in a block of ice and all you can do is tell me it's cold, or I can shove you up Satan's ass and all you can tell me is really hot, right? Like you can't do
Yeah.
anything about it. But a thermostat reads the room. It identifies like, oh, it's a little hot, let me turn it down a bit, or it's a little cold, let me turn it up a bit. And so with that lesson that you learned, and I'm going to let everybody get into your backstory in a minute, but with that lesson, what are your thoughts? Like as a hypnotherapist and somebody who walks people through this,
Right.
is that something common that you see? And then as you see it, what are some of the quote unquote tools or awarenesses or distinctions that can help navigate that process, so like you wouldn't make that mistake again, or you would make sure that when you hire that coach or find that expert that it's the right time for the message to
Right.
be received? Like how do you navigate that?
I think what we all need is to learn how to tell the difference between discursive mind and what I would call real intuition. And let me give you a hint. A real intuitive insight doesn't make you necessarily excited, doesn't lit you up. It can be totally quiet, but very powerfully so. If you have a deep insight, it's almost neutral, but with such a power that you know, that's it, that's true. And this might sound now more, let's say, more mystical and far away than it is. I mean, you're married, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have kids.
Yes, I am.
There was a point in your relationship where you just knew that's the one that I'm going with. Whether this is something that you felt immediately or that came after a couple of dates, but you just knew. You didn't need an expert to tell you, hey, that's the girl. I mean, you didn't need to hire a coach to tell you and ask her, which of these girls is it? You know, or which one should I? You just knew. Mm-hmm. And I think if we get lost in being in distractions, but also within our own mind, then we lose track of it. And somehow what I basically do is teach people how to recognize this true voice that can be very silent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I'm super familiar, and we've talked about this at length on other calls before, and I want to bring it here. And for me, what my gut tells me is that one of the reasons that people miss that wisdom or that intuition, whatever you want to call it, is because of the lack of space that we create in our days, right?
Yes.
Okay. Like, how do you go about that, right? So, like, we hear all these things about morning routines, afternoon routines, boom, 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 boom. And I had this, like, unhealthy relationship with some of those words, right? You hear meditation thrown around like it's candy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, oh, I can't meditate.
All
I
right.
can't turn my brain off. I can't. And I'm like,
yeah.
And now, 20 years later, I'm like, I meditate every day because it's not what I thought it looked like, right? And I take space every day, and it's not what I thought it looked like. But
yes,
for me, and I'm more making a statement here, but I would love your thoughts on it, is that I think one of the biggest enemies of my success in my life was the fact that I always thought I had to fill more space rather than create more space.
Yes.
Is that something that you see a lot of as well?
Oh, totally. And it has become more crazy. I mean, look, I'm 50 now. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s. When I went to retreat, it was 98. And I was 28 years old, and smartphones had just started. And when I came out, like first time, like 4 years later, when I was in closed retreat, and I saw everybody running around in what I perceived talking to themselves, basically. And we didn't even have smartphones. I'm talking about the first Nokias.
Yep.
Even this was for me like, holy fuck, they can't even, and I saw everybody in the supermarket talking to each other, and I said, they can't even make a decision on what they are going to buy by themselves. Mm-hmm. They need to chat about it. I mean, me included. Now I'm chatting with my wife all the tools. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Once you have the technology, we use it, but it worked against us. Mm-hmm. And nowadays it's even more crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, people are so addicted into this. Let me give you right away, everybody, one advice. Just start by going to the toilet without this damn thing. I'm sorry, but if you can't even shit alone, you do not have left a life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, I think that is the best summary that I've ever heard. Like, that just summed up like 10 years of personal development work in one sentence for me. If you can't shit without your phone, you're not living life anymore.
No.
And like, I think it's important, like, for everybody to understand, I love technology. I think it's amazing. I think it's a tool, right?
Yes.
But it's a tool. It's not something that we require. Like, it doesn't keep our heart beating. It doesn't fill our oxygen with lungs. It's a tool that helps us utilize those things. And I still, like, I'm an addict. I have an addictive personality. I understand that I'm self-aware of those things. And like, obviously, you know the work I've done to be here.
Yes. Yes.
But human beings are addicts. We get into something
Yes.
that gives us a dopamine hit, a level of control, a
Yes.
serotonin dump, and then we exploit it until
Yeah.
no end, to where the impulse, or not the impulse, the hit that we get gets dissipated, and then we have to do more of it. And then we
Oh yeah.
end up just completely deprogramming ourselves. And so I want to give everybody a little bit of context, because everyone's going to be like, okay, I got this guy. Can you give everybody, and I don't care how long this goes because I love your story, but you said when I went to that retreat and then 4 years later when I came out, and a few people have some Zygarnik effect going on right now. Can you tell
Right.
everybody kind of your background, your story, where you were then and
Yeah.
how you got to here?
Right. Look, it all started with me practicing martial arts at a very young age. With 15, I was looking for the hardest and toughest style around. And I happened to have been lucky and came to my later teacher that the first thing he did was made us sit and meditate for 10 minutes. And this was the toughest thing I ever experienced to my life so far. I said, I go no further, because no amount of fighting, I was a kid in the streets. I grew up in the streets, fighting was daily, was nothing particularly unknown to me. This was a life that I knew. But to sit by myself for 10 minutes seemed to be hell. And I say, that's it. So I started meditating when I was 14, started meditating regularly when I was 15. And from this point of view, this became very important in my life. Later, I discovered all kinds of traditional schools, Taoist meditation schools, Zen Buddhism, and I found home in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And at one point, with 28, I had to ask myself the question, do I just want to practice this as a hobby? And I was doing it 1 to 2 hours a day. This was still hobby level for me. And I say, okay, either I dive in now deeply, commit fully, or I just stop. Because I couldn't take it anymore as well. I have to say, it wasn't just curiosity, it was pure suffering that drove me there. I couldn't find a way to get happy. Impossible. I saw the impossibility for me, how to experience real happiness. And I didn't see anybody else around me that was happy. And nothing convinced me. No going into business more deeply, making money. I at this time, I was lucky, since I started teaching and coaching when I was 17 already, had my first clients there. I had business owners who were miserable as fuck. So, well, that's not a role model to go after, right? I said, it can't be this. So I went for passion. So I made really my passion, martial arts, my profession, meditation, my profession early on, etc. But, after a while, your passion becomes your job, and it's not so interesting anymore as well. Somehow I couldn't fill this deep hole that I was filling in my life. So with 28, I decided I go full into practice. At this time in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we have two options. We go the celibacy way, so it's a monastery for monks and nuns. And in our school, we had both. Or I go the non-celibate way, which is called the Nakpa tradition, or in Tibetan, or yogi tradition, if you want. Like there you could practice without celibacy. And I went to this path with my former girlfriend at this time. So we went a lay way. We built the center in the first 1.5 years, and then went into retreat. And all in all, I spent 5.5, 6 years in closed retreat. 7 years of it altogether out of society.
So you were 28, right? 28 years old, and you were like literally doing everything, like chasing that hit, right? Martial arts, coaching, everything.
All of it.
And these people that were in front of you, you're like, I don't want to go there. Like that is
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
where I want to end up. And it was like
Yeah.
enough of a pattern interrupt. You're like, if these are my options, I either just have to accept my misery or I
Right.
have to do something to go find myself, create my happiness, and dive all the way in. So you made the decision to go into Tibetan Buddhist,
Right.
the non-celibate route, and then you went into, you built a center first, or did you go right into?
Look, it was also a land that was given to two very experienced yogi teachers that I
Okay.
had, who was a couple who spent like 17 years in retreat at this time, in close retreat. So they were empowered to start this lay chapter of the monastery.
Okay.
It was one of the biggest Tibetan Buddhist schools. It was in the Karma Kagyu tradition, by the way. People who are familiar with this might recognize this. This was in France. And so the land was there. We had this was a former farm, and we didn't need to transform everything. So for 1.5 years, we were working daily. No music, no distraction, no nothing. Concrete in the morning, working with concrete in the morning, learning Tibetan instruments in the evening, studying Tibetan, all of it. So because we had to build and learn and prepare in the same time. So really a tough school. It was really traditional Tibetan style, like no distractions, and you fully commit, and also you're depending on people's donations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so also, I mean, my family, of course, freaked out. They thought he's lost to a cult. And, it was not that I prepared to go there. And for me, it was really, okay, goodbye, everybody. I'll keep writing, but that's it. I've chosen my life. And with all the love that I had, of course, but of course they thought, okay, this kid is lost.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was the happiest.
How I
I
how
was, I,
how
oh
ironic,
man.
how ironic you were lost, but yet you were actually found.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. What you
And
lost was the
yeah,
attachment to everything.
totally,
Oh,
totally. And I never forget this feeling of really selling everything and having basically just two bags with which we had it to France and money for 3 months, and this was it.
yeah.
And nothing, no backup, no retirement plan, no nothing. It was so liberating, so liberating, because that's what I wanted to do. And I felt before this, I never had this feeling of waking up and having the feeling this makes sense.
Mm.
Suddenly I had the feeling I lived a life that makes sense to me. It doesn't have to be monastery. It doesn't necessarily even have to be meditation, but you need to get this sense in life where you feel like this makes sense. This matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be literally ready to die every day. And I could. At this time, I lay down in bed and I say, I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready, universe. I'm ready, God. Whatever your frame of reference is, take me. I'm ready. Great day. I had a great day. And the next morning, literally, what a great opportunity again. Let's go for it.
Yeah. That.
Let's dig into the dirt. Let's get scolded by my teachers for
Yeah,
being a
growth,
dumbass.
learning, right?
Yeah,
Like alive.
absolutely.
Like it's interesting. And I love all of this, and I have a little bit of militaristic in me, right? So I
Oh
love this,
yeah.
and I read Thich Nhat Hanh all the time. But then on the other side, I go read Stoicism to slap me in the face, right? Marcus
Oh yeah.
Aurelius just always has
Oh
a
yeah.
way to like get me right
Boom.
in my soul.
Oh
And
yeah.
and it's really interesting because I have this barometer. I can tell like how grounded I am, how good my day is going to go based on how I feel when I think about the inevitable, when I think about death,
Yes.
when I think about,
Yes. Yes.
that memento mori that I at any moment. And it's really, really become an interesting barometer for me because like as I'm sitting here and I think about my son at school and my wife out at the ranch right now, and I have that moment of like, oh, I miss them. I want them in this moment, and I find myself out of the moment, I get
Yeah.
anxiety. And then I'm like,
Yes.
okay. And then I check in my morning this morning. Oh my God, I filled my son's tank. I filled my wife's tank. I've literally filled my purpose this morning and it's 9 a.m. and I'm getting teary eyed thinking about
Fantastic.
this now.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, and then it's like this overwhelming feeling of like peace and
Oh yeah.
surrender
Yes.
And for me, it comes from awareness, right? Like it's
Oh, yeah,
just
absolutely.
yeah, I think the whole
Absolutely.
world is tasting a little bit of it right now. Like here's the red pill, whether you liked it or not, right? But it's time to
Right.
plug back in, and that awareness is key.
Yes.
So my question is, so you spent like 7.5 years basically isolated
Yeah.
from the world, right?
Right.
When
Yes.
you, because you had been thinking about this, right? So you had already been practicing, for 1 to 2 hours a day, right? And you're like toe touching and you realize like, I can't keep doing this. I got to go or not go. And, and
Absolutely.
then you committed. Was there a period, and I'm really interested to hear your perspective on this. Was there a period of like when you committed and like you got there that you basically went through like withdrawals and shedding, like of like,
Oh, of course.
yeah, can you tell me
Of
about that?
course.
Yeah.
Of course. The thing is, um, the preparation was still nice because, you could go. As soon, I mean, the first commitment we made, like, it starts with 6 weeks. This was like a mini retreat. I mean, I call it mini. I mean, for most people, this is like, how the hell am I going to get 6 weeks in my life anyway? I mean, I would get crazy with one day in retreat, right? You need some gradual growing into this, of course. But then the next big commitment was immediately for 3.5 years, almost 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days in a group. Oh man, the first year was tough. Tough, 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 tough. So people think when I say I was in a monastery, because that's the best word we have,
Yep.
because it's called, first of all, it's called a retreat house in Tibetan, Drupkan. Second, retreat, it's called putting a limit. The Tibetan word for retreat, it means it's a limit. You put limits. And creating limits is what creates growth. But do not think this is a fun journey. I mean, literally all my projections to the world came up being projected to the few people, the poor ones that have been with me in retreat, right? And, and then the situation you experience in retreat is really like, this movie from the 90s, Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah.
Tim Murray or Jim Murray, I don't remember
Bill
his
Murray.
first.
Yep. Bill Murray.
Bill Murray. You always wake up the same day, same people, same situation, same routine. And then the first year is like his first days where his ego try to hold ground. And then the withdrawal of the addictions of your habits that somehow do not find any more possibility to live themselves out. And then all the demons come up. I went through depression, possibly psychotic episodes, all of it. And this in itself is what's meditation truly about. Sorry to bring it to you guys, but people think it's just la la land. No, it's not. No, it's not. Think of meditation really the entry journey into therapy. Then you're much closer to its true meaning. And this was, I would call it even the early days therapy technology. Not necessarily working only on personality, like we can do very precisely with nowadays therapies and psychology, but it's working really on the depth levels of your soul, on your basic attachments. And one of the most basic attachments is actually wanting to be happy. And you need to learn to be happy while being unhappy. And this is something people can't wrap their head around. But I say, as long as you cannot be happy while being unhappy, then you're not happy. You're not really happy. The real happiness must be being in a place where it doesn't matter that you're temporarily going through something, that your mind or your body is experiencing suffering. Because guess what? Inevitable in this life. If you do not want to suffer, don't exist. Cease to exist. But even this is not optional. Even if you kill this body, journey goes on, man. There's no escape until you surrender to what is inevitable.
Yeah, I think God, like, so first, like, thank you for sharing all this. For everybody listening right now, this is probably the fastest summary of what the last 15 years of my life has felt like. And it's mind blowing to me that like I've invested like 7 figures. I mean, and Alp knows I've probably done every therapeutic modality on the planet, from PTSD
Wonderful.
recovery, like EMDR, CBT, prolonged exposure, silent retreats, breathwork retreats, meditation, plant medicine, hypnotherapy. Like I've done them all. And
Fantastic.
what is so mind blowing to me is like, and I know all of them support, right? Like all of them have got me to a point, but still to this day, nothing, and I mean nothing comes close than me spending time alone. Like nothing,
Totally.
nothing.
Totally.
And so I used to call it my pain cave, right? Because I had that Marine in me, right? Everyone's like, what are you going? Why are you going on like an 8 hour hike and like in silent? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to my pain cave, right? I'm going to train. But I really was never going to train. I was
Yeah.
going to find the depths of my soul, go deep into
Oh
my
yeah.
shadows,
Oh
explore what
yeah.
they were. And,
Oh
for
yeah.
all of you that aren't woo woo, just go look up Carl Jung and start diving into shadows and shadow
Oh
work and
yeah.
ego
Oh
shadows
yeah.
and things like that. And so, what you said, the two things that you said, one of them hit me like a ton of bricks. And you said the addictions to your habits. The
Yeah.
addictions to your habits. And like my brain gets that, right? And something I work on a lot. And it's like this construct of that I somehow can control the triggers in my life by creating a false veiled environment that
Oh yeah.
basically protects me. And
Yeah.
then I create habits that keep that illusion of protection
Oh yeah.
going forward, and everything looks good. But then the moment, and I mean the moment, something doesn't look like my ego or brain constructed it as,
Mm.
it's like I swing the other way and the life is over, right? Like this has
Oh
been one
yeah.
of my biggest lessons as an entrepreneur. So being addicted to your habits, with what you're talking about, going in to retreat. And by the way, I love the humility of like what you've done. And for those that didn't catch it, if you're not familiar with like Tibetan Buddhism, like when they live, they go do service and they walk around and they meet people and they literally survive off the donations of others, the donation of food, the
Right.
donation of goods. Like it's literally it is a full servant, self-servant, support other people.
Mm.
I'm assuming the humility of that is a very big lesson in what it
Mm.
is. But when you said that addiction to your habits, like my immediate brain was like, wow, I've read this, I see this, I do this. And it's every time I get somewhat comfortable in what I'm
Mm.
doing, complacency comes, and it's a
Mm.
matter of weeks before
Yep.
it's like an atomic bomb gets dropped in the middle of it, right? And
That's
so
blessing.
it
That's blessing.
totally for me, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because for me, the reason it was an atomic bomb is because my habits were the doingness of it rather than how I
Right.
saw it and the beingness of it, right? And
Yes.
so for
Yes.
everybody listening, the tangibility of like, yes, I know every day I'm going to record a podcast, I'm going to write 12 emails, I'm going to do whatever. But
Mm.
regardless of whether I do any of those or not, the intention of like, I'm going to spend 30 minutes by myself making a plan in silence is my new
Mm.
measuring stick, which allows me to navigate what happens. So for people that are listening that are like, God, like, oh my God, I totally jump on my phone in the morning. I totally, boom, boom, boom. Like, how do you go about breaking down that addiction to habits? Like, what do you do to help break that down or create a new container or create space to start, I don't know, feeling some of these things, processing these things?
I think, first of all, like you described it wonderfully, life will teach you if you do not take care of it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you don't do nothing, be sure life will kick you. I mean, we live in a world of abundant blessings. You just need to realize that it's there to serve you. That your so-called problems are there to serve you. There is it's just a friendly universe, really. It is, but we need to discover this. So, and then how do you break down the habits? Is that your question?
Yeah, like something along those lines. Like, well, so let's call it a pattern interrupter, a wedge, right? Like,
Yes, yes.
there's this point where I think, even listening to this, there's really like one of two options. You're like, oh, I'm aware of this, I know this, or I have no clue, but I get hit with these same things. So Scott Carney calls this the wedge. Like the reason I do breath work and cold therapy, right? It's the wedge.
Right.
So when
Yes,
I'm like
yes.
going along in my day and then all of a sudden, boom, my immediate reaction isn't to jump in and react. It's a wait, pause, like take a breath, like what's
Good.
happening, right? Like
Good.
to pause that wedge. I mean, this unpacked is like attachment to things, then where do things come from, and then ego death. But I think really
Yeah.
for most people, like especially given the state of the world, it's that there's a lot of external triggers coming in every single day. There's a lot of
Yes. Yes.
uncertainty and
Yes.
ambiguity, and there's going to continue to be. So when you think about that, maybe a better question would be like, when you think about that, like what's something or what are some ways in which we can practice daily to be in that space, to understand that life is going to happen and we can teach ourselves a lesson? Or like, how do we handle the triggers from the world, the ambiguity, the uncertainty, the whatever is going to come in? Like, what are some things or ways
Yes.
to think
Yes.
about it?
I think the most important thing is that you understand that we are not here on this life to be entertained. This life is not for consumption. It's for learning. And it's really like this: either you grow and learn daily, and growing and learning is not coming from the world going your way. So I would consider it really problematic if too much goes your way. I mean, just look at. I know I'm taking a long route now, right? I mean, but I think I need to explain, because if I just give a tactics, people won't get it.
Go the long
You,
way. I want the whole way. I want the whole way.
all right, perfect. The first thing is that you need to understand. Basically, let me get back to basic Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. This world, this life is suffering, but not in a negative way. That's a good news, in the sense of, you will experience dissatisfaction. Why? Because the world is never like you imagine it to be. There is a discrepancy, a basic discrepancy between all the things that we want, all the things that we imagine life. I mean, let's take something very basic that most people love: sex. The imagination of it, the thought of it, is always more shiny, is always better than even the best possible sex, until we let go. And then it's turning around. So most people imagine life. They plan life, like you say, to protect, to reach our vision of it. Instead, the real trick is have a vision, have a plan, but so you have a direction that you give yourself with awareness, in order to really discover what's the lesson on the way for you personally. I don't know if I get too abstract right now.
No. Keep going. I love it. I love it.
All right.
Yeah, not abstract at all. I mean, and I think, and I'll just kind of unpack it so you can keep going. So when I think about it, right, and like, it's that like my friend Christine Hassler, she talked about it, it's that expectation hangover, right? Like it's supposed to look a certain way and then it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And we get so attached to what it looks like rather than the process of pursuing it and the growth that happens along the way. And so really the point of setting a vision or setting a goal is to give ourselves a bearing, understanding that it's not going to be a straight line and it might adjust, but at least like we're heading in that direction of growth, of learning, of progress, right?
Absolutely. And especially what you really need to learn, right? And there's different layers of learning. The most fundamental that we need to learn is that this suffering is created, like you say. It is as long experience as you do not discover the real source of true happiness, for which you do not need to accomplish anything or do anything. It's your real nature. So being in your head, being in your ego is suffering. As long as this is your reality, you can try to create the most beautiful dream. And the biggest curse is that things will come true. I mean, look at all the celebrities who seem to have everything and then break it all down. Because there's wisdom in breaking one's own perfect life down. Because in order almost to create a balance between the creation of mind and the basic fundamental nature of mind, which is emptiness, which is spaciousness. We all want to create, we all want to fill the room, but nobody dares to be the room or experience the room at least. And that's an important balance of life. So there is creation and there is destruction. There is emptiness that you need to experience in the form of space in your life, in your mind, and form, accomplishment, going for your goals. And when things do not go your way, what you experience for the moment is the possibility of experiencing emptiness, of giving space, is a moment of fuck, things don't work out, what do I do now? And instead of just running into more thinking, just give it a space and say, okay. And there's a moment of almost like a blank that might lead you to actually perceiving what is. I don't know if I'm too far off.
No, no. Like I feel like you're speaking to my soul, right? Like
I know you get me. That's the problem, you know, because I see who you are. I resonate with where you are at, but I'm afraid sometimes I might lose some listeners who are not into this.
No. This is so. I mean, unpacked. Like I think it depends on the level, but from a really easy standpoint, it's that pause button, right? Like no matter what happens, like you can't lose with space. Like what you're talking about is, you know, it's so like we live in a culture that perpetuates more, which is actually creating less. And there's this entire train of thinking, like there's cognitive dissonance like you wouldn't believe, right? It's like more, go into debt, get this, and then it's that Jamie Smart calls it that toxic thinking. I'll feel this way when. I'll get there when. I'll have this when. Where, you know, you do anything, whether you study, you know, Buddhism or personal development or any basic psychology, it's not do, be, have, it's be, do, have. Right.
Absolutely.
And that distinction is absolutely massive. And so I know for me, somebody who's experienced a lot of trauma, both in my life, my childhood, in the military, but even as an entrepreneur, like traumatic events happen as entrepreneurs every day. Like I've lost 2 companies in the last 4 months, right? Like some of the most challenging financial times that I've ever had in my life. And I am the happiest I have ever been. I'm like,
isn't this crazy?
I'm like, like, okay, cool. Yeah. And I know I'm one of those, like, sometimes I need a lot of pressure to feel it. Right. And it's like, but at the end of the day, I remember like thinking about like, oh, how am I going to pay that credit card bill 7 years ago when it was $2,000 and I couldn't sleep all night. And now I have, you know, $50,000 a month in overhead. I'm like, oh, I'll figure it out. And I'm like, and if I don't, I don't, right? Like, you know, at the end of the day, but I think what it really boils down to, you said it, and it was that space, right? You said everybody wants to build the room, but nobody wants to be in the room.
Yeah.
Like there's this thing where, and I don't care what you call it, pause, pattern, interrupt, wedge, where it's like, whoa, hey, you do remember, even if you go into the hero's journey with Joseph Campbell, the journey doesn't end when they slay the dragon. It ends when they come back and teach the village, which requires reflection and retrospection and looking at like what worked and what didn't work. And then like, okay, what do I do? It was never about the dragon, because I think what a lot of people don't understand is once you slay one, the next one's bigger anyways. So take a moment to reflect, take the lessons and I
mean, what I would love to add to this is now the listeners might be at a different point in their journey, and let me map out in a very simple way how they can identify where they are.
Yeah.
Because look, I see it metaphysically. We are on a journey from victim to vehicle. The 3 V, right? So most people live in a state of victim. Life happens to us. Everything sucks. I don't know why. And I'm suffering. That's something we all know. We also might go back there all the time. The next step is to get into action, into momentum, and all the self-development space that is emphasizing taking action. making goals, having morning routines. All of that is super important for the second step. So in order to, everything has its place. Yes, get into action, create your life. Don't be passive. You can achieve goals. You can create something. In order to already accomplish the first step into discovering wisdom, which is we are co-creators with life. Life is not just happening to us. We co-create. In this time of the second stage, which is becoming the victor, right? The winner, to get life and things done. This is the entrepreneurial stage, I would say. Create, do make things happen, and action. Without action and goals, nothing happens. But then many entrepreneurs like you are at a stage where they experience, I have it, I build it, it goes down, I build it, it goes down, but still they're not fulfilled. I have a client who owns 6 companies. He made his business to buy and grow companies, but he came to me more or less miserable and say, I don't know what's missing. Damn, even if I reach now the 100 grand, the 200 grand, 200 million, grand, million, my level, talking my level. He still thinks, I don't know, man, this doesn't feel right anymore. I say, yeah, because you're already a victor. That's what you can do. So building another company will not do it. You just have no freaking idea what else to do with your life. So he needs to learn to become vehicle. Stop creating, let life happen through you. And this is very scary for most people who are very accomplished, who reach goals, who know how to make things happen, because there they need to embrace even more space. And if you do not do it, then life kicks you in the chin, like it happened to you. You lose 2 companies.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my wife.
Because now you enter the next stage of creation, my friend. You will create from space. Mm-hmm. You will create not miserable hustling, finally getting things done and almost not being able to rejoice because you're saying, was this worth it? No, you start happy now. You will be happy tomorrow on the way, and you will be happy when it's accomplished.
Yep.
When you're back on the feet.
This podcast wouldn't have existed if I didn't lose those companies. Literally, This would have never, 8 years in the making of wanting to launch a podcast, wanting to do it, talk about it, own the equipment for 8 years. And it was literally the smack in the face that was like, okay, you don't want to do it on your own. And you've been denying what you've been called to, and you've been pushing off and making excuses. Fine. Hello. Smack in the face, right? My wife tells me all the time, she's like, the universe is going to keep kicking you in the mouth until you learn the lesson, right? And I just I laugh at it because I look back now, my wife is so wise, and obviously all of you can laugh at me through this because I'm okay with that. But it's like, the whole analogy, they teach this in personal development, right? Different job, same boss, different relationship, same partner, right? It's not them, it's us and our patterns and our views and everything. And, when you said those 3 stages of victim to victor to vehicle, really the biggest distinction for me is I stopped being a victim a long time ago, but I lived in this victor. I'm going to beat what happened to me as a victim. I'm going to prove the victim side wrong. I'm going to prove. And it always got to this point, but then it was never there. But it was then once I realized that when I got smacked in the teeth one more time, that it wasn't happening to me and I didn't get to beat it. It was like, oh, there's a lesson in this. What am I missing? And then when you just said, let life happen through you, that was the clearest thing ever. Who am I to think that I know? Now, I might have a wisdom and intuition and a voice that I share and I trust in that moment. But once it's out of my mouth, that's it. I'm surrendered to what comes next. I'm not I'm going to say this and I'm going to do this and it's going to lead here. Because that puts me back into victor. And so, I've never heard it broken down like that. That was really good for me.
That's how I approach all my sessions, how I approach even my interview with you. I had zero preparation.
Yeah, me too.
You know why? Because it's not important. Either we almost might sound more esoteric than, we channel truth, we embody wisdom, then it also doesn't matter what happens or not happens because it's not happening to you. Guess what? Life didn't even kick you. Who are you to judge that you have been kicked?
Yes.
You know, it's the next stage, George, because in your own evolution, you have come to a point where you have your heart and your soul to share much more than your marketing know-how. And that's why I feel attracted to you. You remember our first conversations, I hardly just discovered you. You made this offer with the lighthouse. I said, I don't know you. I have no idea what you did, and I don't care, but I trust you. I decided I trust you because there was something in your vibration, how you show up in this world, that was right. And look how we connected.
Totally. Totally. It's so funny you say that, like everything from like the prep. I'm like, I didn't prepare either, right? And the thing is like that's also like what we spend our days teaching people and everything. But it's just this. I believe I call it source flow, intuition, wisdom.
Yep.
But like the example I was given, it's like everybody, and I love this, right? And it's gonna land for everybody. When you're working out in the morning with no music, you always have your best ideas. When you're in the shower, not on your phone, you always have your best ideas, right? When you're laying
Absolutely.
in bed and you can't fall asleep because you're afraid you're going to lose it, it's when we create that space
Oh, yeah.
that flow comes. And call it what you want. I call it wisdom. It's yours.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yes.
yours.
Yes.
And I think like even going back to this, like if I had to say anything, like really, I'm at the point now where I'm almost obsessed about space. And it's
Yes.
been really
Yes.
interesting to see, like sometimes, like I look now at like what I get done in a day without making a list. And if I had that accomplishment 8 years ago and I was like, this is what you got to get done today, I'm like, this is going to take me 4 weeks. There's no way
Yeah.
I can do this in a day, right? But it's like,
Yes.
when I don't know, oh man, no, I love this. I absolutely love this. And you're
If you live from space, things can get done in a way that's almost magical. And this is the real thing. And this is what people really misunderstand with the law of attraction. It's not that you can desire things to you based on your ego. And you become a manifester when you embrace space and don't give a shit if something comes to your life or not. Then real manifestation happens. And it's not, you do not create from ego. As long as you create from ego, good luck. First, learn the lesson of being a victor, right? I mean, get your shit together, get a job instead of just sitting on your bum and meditating on $1 million, right? That's not going to help you,
yeah,
right?
meditating on $1 million isn't going to bring it in.
No, not really, right? And the thing is, uh, life is your best teacher if you open up to it and surrender to it. And my path was through meditation, because what meditation does is the perfect container to get in touch with space. And real meditation is so simple that it's damn difficult. The highest levels of meditation are almost without instruction. You basically have to be. What the fuck? I mean, who can start with just be? And most people do not know how to be without thinking. They think I'm my thoughts. And all I can really invite everybody is like, discover yourself, give yourself a chance to die having discovered your deepest self, which is happy by no reason, which is blissful, which is totally peaceful, which is it's the best you could not even imagine, and it's there right for you if you just shut the fuck up for a moment. I mean, internally shut up the fuck and sit down and just give space, give the universe, give grace a chance to come into your life so that you recognize it. It comes to your life whether you recognize it or not, but usually you call it a curse. You say, why is that happening to me? Oh, is this? Like, stop bitching around, sit down, open up to what is.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about meditation, I think that was one of the hardest things for me was I had that chatter, right? Our monkey mind, right? You know,
Yeah.
the programming we have up there that needs to shut up sometimes, having it have to look a certain way, having to do anything. And I didn't realize that most of my life I was meditating through movement. I
Oh
just
yeah.
wasn't recognizing what it was.
Oh
But
yeah.
like, you know, I think about, and I can't think of anybody who can't tell me this, like that moment when you're like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym, and you start moving, and then like
Mm.
you're
Mm.
10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, and then all of a sudden you literally feel like a superhero. Doesn't matter how
Oh
good of
yeah.
shape you're in or not, like you just get grounded and connected and in flow. And
Yes.
you know, when you said that a minute ago, what popped into my brain when you said like to fall in love with yourself deeply or to see yourself deeply,
Yeah.
like the thought that popped in my head is see yourself as you are, not how you think you are.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that concept for me is something I really I don't work on it. I observe like every day of like when I'm
Yes.
going through my day, like cuz like now I have the tools and the things to recognize like what's happening, how I'm feeling,
Mm.
explore those feelings.
Mm.
But it's a really interesting thing on how quickly, even with what I've had in my life and where I am and where I'm going, how quickly it can go from I am who I am to I'm that thing, or I'm that
Yes.
thought, or I'm
Oh yeah.
that blank, or I'm that result. And so one of the best things for me in this, I'm like, I don't know, I'm not this, okay, I'm pretty smart, but I like, I need like quick hits. And so I grabbed Thich Nhat Hanh's like mini version of
Yeah.
his meditations,
Right.
right? And there's this one that I always remember, and it's always about walking, right? And
Mm.
I'll read it before I go, and he's like, walk, and he's like, but don't think. I'm like, what do I do when I think? He's like, no, feel your foot. What did you step on in that moment? What did
Absolutely.
you see? What did it
Right.
look like? And it's like this training and this practice of being
Mm.
and like this
Mm.
moment, like the moment comes and it's gone, and I don't think about the moment again. It's the next step. It's the next step.
Yes. Yes.
And so for me, walking is like literally one of my favorite ways to get into it now.
Very good. Yeah.
But what would you recommend for people? Because like obviously I understand.
The thing, yeah,
Go.
that's good. I think the I might not be very popular with what I say now.
Good. That means we.
Okay.
This is why we're friends.
Yes. Thing is, I think most meditation instruction out there is crap. Not, I mean, first of all, most meditation teachers have no fucking idea what they're talking about. You know, I've probably meditated 30,000, probably more hours, and I consider myself, I didn't even scratch the surface, and I do not teach meditation. I don't. You know, because I had teachers, let me just say it without commenting, who could go through walls. Let me say it like this.
Mm-hmm.
When you're there, okay, start opening your mouth. Sorry, that's my criteria, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's the equivalent when you're deep into something. Look, you've been deep into business.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a rookie who've read 2 business books, who's living in the basement of his mom, and talks about being an entrepreneur with some, I don't know, some fake bullshit that he's proposing, do you take him much serious as an entrepreneur who's, well, you know, best thing you would have like is to say, yeah, go on, maybe someday you discover real business. I mean, it's fine, you know. And I mean this with all my love. I mean, it's crap. Everybody is talking about mindfulness has become the thing now. But mindfulness, damn, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talking about mindfulness and real mindfulness is almost like saying, hey, start to power lift with the double weight, with double body weight.
Mm-hmm. When you've never lifted before.
When you never lifted before, stop.
Yeah.
I mean, stop there. Just start slowly. The first thing that people who want to get into meditation is first to get comfortable creating a habit.
Mm.
You do not need more than 5 minutes, but do them every day and use them as a concentration practice. Make it very simple. Do not try to be aware of what is going on, whatever. Just learn to focus one's mind. These are the basic bicep curls that you first need to accomplish. You need to train the mind by basic concentration. First, After you have built up sufficient power to focus your mind, for example, that you can count from within the meditation period without being distracted. Simple counting. You just count 1, 2, 3, 4. Most people can't count until 10 without having to start over because was I at 8 or 9? I don't know. Their mind is so distracted. First, learn to count. If you get until 100, great. Count until 200. Maybe you get to 1,000. And you can either count or you can focus, counting your breath, for example, right? Already the instruction, recognize the breath going in and out and be aware, is too advanced for most people. They can't do it. And forget about not wanting to think. You do not take thoughts as an object until you can make at least like 1,000 curls, which would be like counting until 1,000. If meditation is taught in a proper way, very gradually, so that you accomplish one step after the other, it becomes fun. Otherwise, people get too high-level instructions, because the high-level instructions are great, and the teachers who teach them mean them, but they come from a context where you dedicate fully into meditation practice, where you live either in a monastery, where you're surrounded by this, and then it's fine to get this high-level teachings. I got high-level teachings where I had not the slightest idea what do I do with this, but I was sitting all day. I had time to figure it out. If you just have 5 to 10 minutes, you know what will happen? People will think about meditating while pretending to meditate, and then just repeat to what they've read about meditation. This doesn't bring you anywhere.
Yeah, you said this earlier. You said life is not for consumption, it's for learning.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that ties that in so well that, like, even in that practice, like, the diligence, the intention, and the discipline to be like, God, I got to 7. Okay, I'm going to start over. And, like, learning through that process.
Yep.
Instead of the ego checking the box of like, look, I did it, or it looked a certain way. Like, I'll actually give everybody an example because people know I'm a nut and I do cold therapy, right? Like, I love ice baths, right? Well, what everybody doesn't know is that when I started them, I kept the water at like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, so 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. And everyone's like, okay, when you go in, I did all my breath work. The first 14 days, I didn't last more than 9 seconds. I couldn't. Like, I physically couldn't. And like, I knew that physically I wasn't going to die and I wasn't going to get hurt, but I literally wasn't at the point where I could break through that wall, break through that resistance. And I was like, I'm still going to go. And so then it became fun. I'm like, well, maybe I'll get 10 seconds today. And I like jumped in and I was like, boom. And then it was the most amazing thing because I wasn't posting about this. Nobody knew. It was 4 a.m., me, myself. And it was like day 17. I was like 10 seconds and I jumped in and the wall was gone. And I ended up staying in for 13 minutes. And then I was like, oh my God. And then I was like in, right? But then the next day it was like 2. And I just respected the process. Like I respected my body. And I realized like, hey, if that's what it feels like, maybe I'm not supposed to push through this. Maybe this is the lesson. Maybe this is, rather than try to control, like surrender, like, and being able to discern, like, oh, this is me quitting. I'm like, no, I'm up at 4 a.m. doing my breath work and getting in the cold water. I've already won the game. Whatever happens in that tub is a bonus. And that's kind of how I
see it. It's exactly this kind of humility that we need in life. You need to be humble enough to feel, I don't win at this, and yet I'm going to do it. You need to be humble enough. Nowadays, everybody wants to start off being a big shot meditator, talk about meditation, teach meditation to the world, have a YouTube channel about meditation, proclaim it, just to convince themselves that it's good for something, because they've never experienced it themselves. Because if they would not teach it. They would sit down and meditate more and more. I needed to be kicked out of retreat to get back into life. Do not think that I was fed up. Why would I ever go out? My teachers, there were teachers who kicked me out. Well, that's enough.
The best teachers,
and then the next level.
Well, I
That's the
think,
thing, start with when you learn something, do not try to be a master. I mean, like in business,
yep.
everybody, I mean, you do not start. I love it how you say, get out, do it, have the humility that it takes time.
Yeah.
And don't buy into this bullshit. Either you make a million right away or it's not going to work. It's even not about the million in the first place anyway.
Nope. No. And it's having the humility, but the self-awareness to realize like you've never made it. Like
Yeah.
the moment you're like, oh, I crossed the finish line, like get ready because it's about to be a rough ride. Like I tell everybody this, like I've been teaching email marketing for God 11 years now, and I'm considered one of the best at it.
Yep.
And I literally sat down, Alp, like 2 months ago, and I'm like, something's missing. Something's missing. I'm like, I can't talk about this anymore. I'm not practicing it enough. Screw it. I'm writing an email every day. And literally every day I write an email and I send it to people. And I'm like,
Perfect.
and I'm going through my own process again. But like I said, it's the
Yes.
next level. It's the next
Yes.
level.
Yes.
And like mastery isn't something you do, it's something you live. It's something you are. It's just a part of it. Like meditation isn't something you do. The habit gets you into the momentum, but then it's something that you are, like you live it, you breathe it, you happen with it. And that's, I don't know, like for entrepreneurs, for anybody listening to this, like I want to change the thinking of like, I'm going to do this for 100 days to like, I'm going to embody this. I'm going to be
Oh,
this. Like,
yes.
I'm going to
Oh,
be
I
a
love this.
student of this. Like,
I love this.
because it's really the only way. Anything else is atrophy, in my opinion, right? Like,
Oh, yes.
it's just atrophy. And it's just such a
This
profound.
is so in line with I share some of the highest teachings of my teachers. Who is in it? So there's one. Whenever you think I got it, you're more far away from it. The moment you think I got it in meditation, you're far away from it. That's the thing. The moment you think, I know what I'm talking about, I really know, and start talking or teaching about it, you lose it. That's very true in meditation. And let me give you quick advice before you buy into any gurus of meditation, etc. Whoever tells you they got it is full of crap. The real teachers, the real advanced ones, say exactly the words that you just said. And for me, that's why you're an authentic teacher also of business, because to say you embody it. You become the path. For those who have become the path, it doesn't matter where there's a, I mean, I love it how you put it. It's an infinite game. Wake up. It's an infinite game. So how do you play an infinite game? From the point of view, learn this technique and then you get it. There's nothing to get it. Get into the habit and the humility of learning, of doing, of embodying things. And I so love it if you approach all what you do exactly with this. It's perfect. Like in order to say, do this 12 sequence email and you get $1 million. What the fuck? Right?
Yeah.
No, like, write, pour in all your wisdom, all your heart, like you do. And I read these emails and they touch me. There is something in it. And you could write whatever you want. It's not the content, it's the intention that gets through.
And the best salespeople
Yeah.
in the world will tell you and teach you, and for everybody listening, that sales is just a transference of energy. That's
Oh,
all
yeah.
it is. And
Yes.
so, like, all
Yes.
of that matters today. And earlier we were talking about breaking through a level, right? Like, this is going to
Right.
sound really interesting, but like 8 weeks ago, I became a parent to 3 snakes, right? So we went from
Right.
having no animals except horses, and then my wife and my daughter went to the pet store to get a fish and a hamster for my son and my daughter and came home with
Yeah.
a ball python. And I was like,
Huh.
oh, so we got the thing that eats the hamsters. Okay, I'm cool. I didn't have a fear of snakes, but I'd never really like
Right.
handled them, so I didn't know.
Right.
And then I became like the herpetologist, and then we got 2 more, and like daddy's like the snake whisperer. But what I love, and I mean, I love them. Like I watch them every month, and they shed their skin once a month. And if they
Wow.
do not shed their skin, they cannot grow. And it's
Wow.
like the metaphor, like, and I have one sitting in front of me. She's sleeping over there, but at my desk that I can see. And like, I look at them and I'm just reminded, like, every day they live and they be.
Right.
And then as a part of their process, if they don't shed, if they don't experience that process and letting go and leaving it behind, they can't grow anymore. They get
No.
infections, they die. And like watching Mother Nature happen, it's really powerful for me when I look at things and I'm like, oh, wow, that happened. Oh, I'm letting something go. I shed. I learned a lesson. I moved through it versus like, let me hold on to it. Don't take my skin. I don't want the new one, right? Like, I want
Yes.
to hold it
Yes.
forever.
Yes. Yes.
And so man, I think there's so much. I mean, this could be an 18-hour episode because we could unpack all of this.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, and I gotta apologize for everybody. I was so excited to get into this with Alp. I forgot to tell you guys where to find him at the beginning of the episode, so I'm gonna do it now. The easiest place to find Alp is on Facebook. Just add him as a friend
Yes.
or shoot him a message. His name is
Yeah.
spelled ALP, and then his last name is Tekin, Tekin. So ALP space Tekin. I just wanted to get it out there before we go any deeper because I'm
Right.
just like, I forgot to tell everybody.
Great.
And I think one of the things that resonated with me a lot is I have this. I feel like, and this is just self-awareness, that I modulate a lot between victor and vehicle, right? I heard you say,
It will
like,
be.
yeah, and like I love the daily practices. Like I'm doing a challenge with High Speed Daddy right now, 75 days, and like I'm pushing and I love it. But then I've also found the points where I see like, oh, I'm winning it versus like, oh, I'm in it, right? Oh,
Yes.
I'm winning it. Oh, I'm
Yes.
in it. And what you said about the meditation, like as soon as we're done, I'm going on a walk and I'm counting to 100 and I'm just going to go walk and I'm going to see
Yes.
kind of what happens.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
I love like, it's like this play in it, like this childhood
Hmm.
play of like, it's a game, but
Yes.
it's not.
Yes.
It's not a game that has to be won. It's not a game that like you die and you lose if you don't make it to 100.
Perfect. Yes.
I think that's such a profound, like what I love
You
about.
know, you know, I'm meditating for a lot of years, and there's days I would say I can't count until five,
Yeah.
almost. And I, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, guess what I've lost? Nothing. You know what I gained? A whole lot of awareness about what's going on with me that day. Because guess what? Sometimes I am distracted. Sometimes uh, patterns come up, deep-rooted patterns. I mean, just the other day, people imagine me, for example, another misconception. Hey, oh, he must be so cool, accomplished, this and that. I wanted to pick up a fight with a guy at a beach. I mean, really, like, because, you know, they were playing ball, nothing. And cute situation, but somehow I felt my family is in threat, you know. So then something else came through, right?
Mm-hmm.
An old habit. Luckily, I didn't go into a fight like would have in the past, you know, like, okay, what the heck? And
Mm-hmm.
then I could switch in 2 minutes, but this was like, wow, where did this come from? And then I recognized, oh, there was still a pattern that was right away triggered, maybe by the voice, a particular style of the guy looking at me at the beach, whatever. Something got triggered, and we are never done. And then it's this, and it's perfectly fine, and it's okay. Then I went to this guy, hey, say, sorry if I was rough, and apologize immediately, and good friends and all good again. You know, like, but we never know what comes through.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly all right.
Yeah. I think this is just like a walking value bomb of everything that we've talked about. And it just triggers my brain. It's so validating for all the work that I do and have invested in myself because
Yes.
it's really refreshing. And the one thing my buddy Stefanos and I talk about all the time is that, you know, I still have parts of me as an entrepreneur, as a human, that wants a finish line, like that wants a
Yeah.
finish line. So what I did
Yeah.
is I replaced the finish line with awareness. And I tell myself the finish line is when I'm aware
Yeah.
in spite of action, right? And
Yeah.
so agnostic of action. And so I understand my psyche right now, and I'm like, I need that finish line. It's like, so my finish line today is to be aware of what's happening and do nothing with it, like just to be aware. And I think it's just such a profound distinction and thought process to keep with, right? Like I wrote an email the other day about a lot of the times we end up with problems because we don't ask the right questions.
Yes.
And, when we think about this, like really, no matter what you do, you throw out all the bullshit that you see of like, oh, write these 12 emails and I'll get you $1 million or
Mm,
you're one funnel
mm.
away. I'm like, no, you might be one funnel and 843 edits away,
Yeah.
but you have to continually be in this game. Like it's an infinite
Yes.
game and it's a game. It's something that has
Yes.
to be played
Yes.
and practiced. And, you can't drop the ball and then be like, I quit, I'm done forever. Or my favorite
Yeah.
analogy that
Yeah.
lands every time is get a flat tire and slash the other three. It's like, no, change
Yeah.
the tire.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
don't drive through the pothole next time
Yeah.
and keep going.
Yeah.
And it's about resiliency and, forgiveness and awareness. So I don't know. I don't even know. You have anything else you want to say? Like I'm just like I'm happy as a pig in
You
shit right
know,
now.
as this is related to business, two questions for everybody, for all entrepreneurs. First of all, why are you really playing this game? If you're just in for the money, ask yourself, okay, I reached the goal, and then what? If your fantasy is exit, why don't you fucking exit? Right away. Just you can live in the streets. You absolutely can. I had the happiest phase on the ego level fulfillment, right? By having around $100 a month to live as in retreat, more or less, and sometimes not knowing next week where the next food will come from. You think you cannot have this, it's an illusion. No. If you want to exit, if you just hustle in order to quit working one day, just don't bother. Stop hustling right away. If not, ask yourself, what am I looking for? What kind of validation? What do I want to prove to myself? Or to whom do I want to prove? Whatever. And guess what? You do not need to accomplish anything to be worthy. You do not need to accomplish anything to be a fully happy, functional human being that can live a fulfilled life. And when you know this, then strive for this becoming your reality. And then you're happy no matter what. Happy with $1 in the bank, happy with debts of $1 million. I don't know. I never experienced this, but maybe I wouldn't. I shouldn't open my mouth so wide. But basically, yes. Because, look, 1.5 years ago, I saw my dad passing away. And it was so beautiful to see. My dad was an entrepreneur who broke down, who couldn't get out, who somehow, that's the story I told myself, who couldn't deal with the fact that several times he went bankrupt, and after the last time he basically gave up on himself, burnt out. So this was the story how I saw him. And he had the most peaceful and happy death. He was okay with himself because there was a moment of surrender to life, and then seeing his life wasn't lost. Even if you judge yourself as losing or being a loser, the only thing that's between you and happiness is this judgment. Nothing else. And it's not the world judging you, it's you yourself. So I invite everybody to be happy right now. But really right now, by letting go of whatever you think is in the way. Because it's your birthright. Happiness is there and it's your birthright. So claim it. Don't postpone it to tomorrow until you reach it, because tomorrow might never come. It's like this famous joke, like this Scottish pub where it's written free beer tomorrow, and people go in and say, hey, can I have the free beer? You say, yeah, but tomorrow. So the next day they come, hey, what about free beer? You say, yeah, but tomorrow. There's always free beer tomorrow, right? And if we live life like this, once I have this, I will be happy. That's really where we waste life. Because we buy into the illusion that we need anything in order to be happy. But guess what? No. Be happy because we are. And then you live your life and plan your goals from there. Have goals, why not? We need direction. But play it as a game, as an infinite game, like you used to say. And what is the content of it? It's relationships. That's why they beat algorithms by thousandfold. So I fully love your motto. That's why it so much resonates with me. That's why I love to learn from you, man. I mean, I literally consider myself a devotee, a student of George Bryant's marketing lessons, because you pour your heart in it, and there is this practical wisdom and experience. And this is the real stuff that I feel attracted to learn from.
Yeah, man, it's an honor. It's an honor both ways. It's an honor that I get to share, and then that I get to be here with you and have these calls and share this journey with you. I literally am speechless. I don't have anything to add to any of this. I think that is a perfect time for a mic drop from you on Alp. So everybody listening. To find Alp, go on Facebook. He's in our Facebook group, but you can find him on Facebook. Alp, ALP space Tekin, Tekin is his name. Adam, shoot him a message. He's an absolute master. Obviously, you can tell. You can hear it. He doesn't need to say it. But if you need anything, reach out. Send him some love on this episode. I would love it if you send him a message with one of your takeaways, something you brought forth out of this. And Alp, I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. This is an absolute gift, and I appreciate that we got to spend this time together.
Thank you very much, brother.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. That wraps another episode of the Mind of George show. I'm going to go for a big meditative walk now and shed some happy tears because I'm like overwhelmed with joy right now. So remember, we'll see you in the next episode. Have a beautiful day. And remember that relationships always beat algorithms.